everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tuber. Welcome back. It's your 12th Suits LA episode review. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe out there in the big old world. Well, we have our determination on season 2 of Suits LA. We ain't getting it. Now, I could put on anything. I could say anything I want. Some people will be saying like, but you never spoil the show. Like, all I've done for half the season is talk crap about it. Which, fairly reason, if you look at any of the content I made throughout the last nearly 6 years of making reviews of What's in the Tube, even beforehand when it comes to just other ActionX products, I've always been completely honest and transparent on my thoughts of a show. If I'm praising a show, if I'm praising something, it is because I, as a viewer, really, really love it. But if it's something that I'm not resonating with, and just because I pick a show, doesn't mean I'm always going to love it. I said this before in the beginning, that I picked the show because, A, I love Stephen Amell, and I want to support him no matter where he goes next, whether it was somehow at some point finishing Arrow, going into reviewing Heels, to now here, that, for me, there was a point where, like, yeah, I would have loved to keep going, to be able to, keep talking about it. But at the end of the day, as much as I'm committed to reviewing something to the end of the day, doesn't entirely mean I like it. I hear with Susa, I have been very local where episodes were not hitting to me. They were not exactly what they were trying to showcase for me when I was seeing those first trailers, those first promotion materials. So by the time we get into the season itself, like for me, I was always like, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I always wanted. This wasn't it. And, as a result, I'm not the only one that thought like that. A lot of other people did. And, that's when you start the ratings start to decline. And again, going on a Sunday night time slot very late into the evening, when you have people going home, obviously I knew the ratings were never going to be that strong. I knew that going into it. And also the other problem is that you're locked on a very specific platform, on a streaming network that isn't necessarily something that everyone wants to. Who's actually getting Peacock? I'm being completely transparent here. Who is actually getting Peacock as a subscription service? I only did because I just had very much inconsistencies with my schedule that I had no choice but to get Peacock. I was not able to watch a good handful of these episodes live. And because if I really, really cared about the show, and that's another different when I say if I like the show, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can to make sure I watch it live. As much as that would be sometimes very difficult conversation with the people that I'm close to, that, hey, I really like this show. I don't want to spend money in the streaming service. I'd rather watch it live. I'm going to do that. Those are very difficult conversations. But the fact that I've most times than not, I've chosen, obviously, the people I love and care about, obviously more than a hobby, but still, either way, the fact that I wasn't really even close to making an argument for the show speaks volume. And that's another thing where people say, oh, you never watched the original Suits. The whole point of Suits LA was to bring in a new era of fans into that would eventually go back and watch the originals that are on Netflix or even on Peacock. For me, like I said before, it's not that. It was never, for me, it never really got me too hooked into it. It never did. There are moments that, even today, I still think this was a really good episode, to get ahead of it a little bit. I thought this was a really good episode, where, again, like, it was the dynamics. It was another Suits alum coming in, trying to, shake up the formula a little bit. And I feel like we are going into a very interesting finale, now series finale. Does it suck that, yeah, they never had enough chance to really bounce back and really kind of retooled what the show's positivities were, and being able to kind of, kind of have a new identity, have a new foot. Now, again, I don't know if this was the style of the original Suits. I really don't know. As someone who's watched hundreds of hours of serialized television, there were moments where, like, here, it felt like we actually were going to have a consistent plot. And now, all of a sudden, it's kind of like, yes, the last week's episode is kind of informing what's going on in the present. I completely understand that. But still, to the point of the matter of, like, we still haven't been able to really crack what makes this show fully work in all angles. For me, it's a little concerning. It was a little concerning, and I'm not surprised NBC wanted to pull the plug. Again, when you have, content like this, especially on Peacock, it's very difficult to sell. It very much is. Again, streaming is not exactly where it's at, especially if you're not on Netflix, if you're not even a Hulu, not even a Disney Plus. Like, getting shows on those streamings is not as easy as it was before. Like, even, like, people can say, oh, let's just move Suits LA to Peacock. Like, it's not as easy as that. Like, who's going to watch it? Who's going to even pay for Peacock for Suits LA? I'm just being honest with you. Who? Ooh. I wouldn't be surprised if it does get sold off to Netflix, that it finds second life and maybe Netflix wants to pick it up. I wouldn't be remotely surprised because they're in the Stephen Amell business. But until that moment happens, I just don't see it. I really, really don't. This show definitely needs like some sort of retooling in a hypothetical season 2, which we're not obviously going to get anymore, at least at this time period. I could be wrong though, but I don't think this episode really moved the needles. Where like, yeah, the news came out just before the announcement that, not even the announcement that Louis Litt's returning episode was going to be here. I honestly, again, to all my provisions, I had no real clarification. I really didn't. And I knew that wasn't going to move a lot of needles. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And, we are going to move forward. We are still going to review the last 2 episodes now as billed as the final episodes of the series. And sometimes this happens. That's showbiz, Not every show's going to get season 2. Not every show's going to be able to continue. It does suck. It's really difficult, Sometimes it's for genuine quality reasons. Sometimes it's for very shitty, corporate reasons. This was just in the former, and that's something that I'm going to stick by to, and we'll talk more about this when we get to now our definitive review in a couple weeks from now for Suits LA, and we'll see how that all goes. But to go back to this episode, I did think this was a really fun episode. I think, again, it played with some of the existing characters. It kind of got a little bit more into the flashback, kind of expanding, having a little minor payoffs with some of the character relationships we've experienced so far in the series. And having Louis Litt, even though, again, I've never, ever been introduced to the character prior to this, I've only, again, seen him in minor bursts on TikTok and some sorts of sort. Like, even seeing that was enough for me to be curious. Like, between Harvey and Louis, I'm more inclined now than ever to go watch that original series. And that's just how I'm just curious. But again, that's still down the roads for me, in my opinion. So when would I even get around to that? But we'll see how things go. We'll see. But in all honesty, I think this episode was really good. I think there was a good track record to kind of, bounce back a little bit of the ship. And I'm really curious to see how things will get wrapped up, so to speak, when we come back next week with the season finale, with the series finale. So with that being said, let's go for the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Suits LA. It's bright and early in the morning, 6 a.m., which I immediately would just hit the snooze button and just try to get an extra hour or so before I legitimately have to get up. But no, it's bright and early in LA, where Leia gets a call from Rick. Apparently, Rick has left the latest script from a Mr. Aaron Bridger, and he's very happy with it, and he really is curious to see if he would be able to sign him, maybe potentially for some script deals, see what potential abilities could lie in his future. Obviously, we know that Leia is Aaron Bridgers, and obviously, as much as this news is a little bit enticing for her, obviously she can't fully jump on the wagon here, but regardless of the same of whatever it might be, she hangs up and says, okay, I'll get in touch with him, don't worry about that. She kind of contemplates, now that her writings hit that certain stride that I think is now garnishing real agents' attention, will that actually be enough for her to pivot ship and have a whole career change in the middle of her run here? We cut over to back to Rick, who's in a little bit of a minor mood. Decides, okay, the office is empty. Can take a little bit of early advantage here. So he decides to do a Breakfast Club reenactment, which Dylan, played by Victoria Justice, appears out of nowhere, watching him, about to join in on the fun before, of course, Rick, being a little bit embarrassed here, turns off the music and asks what the heck Dylan's doing here. Apparently, Dylan's about to wrap up her Warner Brothers deal, again, doing the action film and doing the indie drama at the same time. So now that that's wrapped up, she's kind of looking for the next thing. What does she want to do next? And Rick's like, well, what do you want to do next? Obviously, I can take the guesstimation. Now you've had something you really wanted to do and something that you want to do to kind of bolster your attention in the mainstream. Now that you have both, I'm assuming you want to next do a passion project, something that you've been dying to do as kind of if the hype dies off, if the heat dies off for an actor and actress, at least they get to do one passion project of theirs before they leave Hollywood. Hers is doing a book adaptation of one of her favorite books. And there's recent developments that a director might be circling the project. It's finally coming to fruition, and she wants to get an audition for the lead. And obviously, Rick's like, 100%, I will do whatever I can to do this. Obviously, just be wary, because considering the fact you've only done a limited type of roles, that some people may not be able to, openly see you as something else, but I will do my best to kind of, take a look at this. And also, the first case of mild flirtation is that Dylan suggests to Rick, the scene in the movie actually has the main character taking off his shirt. And Rick's like, that will never ever happen. So don't you worry about that. As he walks away from that. We cut over privately to some unknown part in the United States because I did not pay attention to exactly where Stewart, on his self-mandated journey of self-recovery, self-healing from his recent incidences with not David Bowie, has checked himself into a behavior rehabilitation therapy retreat for the next week to kind of get away from things, kind of, to be able to like kind of calm his stress levels down, be around people that also need assistance, see if he can, like, mend the ship over it a little bit. However, sadly, upon not even 5 seconds of his arrival, he's greeted by Suits alum Lewis Litt, who, again, not having any prior real context from him in the past. I very much enjoy his banter. I very much love people getting into each other's face and, like, having witty remarks. And, these two have a really, really good chemistry off each other because, obviously these two have, like, a bit of a short temper. You kind of get the vibe of it, and these two are now fighting each other and both being lawyers. So it kind of is like them meeting each other's match and, over a freaking dolly, which I'm just like, my dude, you both only have one suitcase. I don't think you need a dolly for a damn suitcase. Like, and also, you're going to a retreat for a week. Who is bringing enough suitcases to warrant a dolly? Like, come on. I really don't know. The two start bickering and about to really get into each other. Lewis making some sort of remark about, the differentiation between his fist and his dick. I kid you not, that actually was a line in the show. Until their therapy leader shows up, noticing these two, and they're like, okay, well, it seems like you both are here for the therapy program. So with that being said, you two will be 100% in my class together for the duration of your week here. So get used to seeing each other. And these two are, like, once again going back to the dolly, even though there's clearly another dolly that just came right in front of them. And these two have the audacity to keep fighting each other. Lewis getting petty by sitting on the damn dolly, which I'm just like, why? Y'all are adults. You guys are grown adults, like 40-year-olds, 50 years old. I don't know. I mean, like, look, for me, would I love to have the same energy and remarks when I'm 40 years old? I would love to do that. But respectfully, right now, I'm just like, me being only 27, I'm just like, damn. We cut over back to Ted's house, who is, remembering a very solemn day of his life where it was one of Eddie's last final, moments, his last big moments with Ted before, he passed. All of a sudden, Samantha shows up, delivering some food. Apparently, she also remembered it's a special day, and she wants to spend it with Ted. Which I'm like, that's very, very sweet. And the two decide to go in and just, rememorate on Eddie's life. We come back to later on where Ted returns back to the office, being greeted by Erica, as she's went through the recent round of bonuses for all the senior associates, and partners, even deciding to give herself a little bit of extra on top. And Ted's like, all right, well, I understand you have been stepping up a little bit around here since of my minor absences, as we call it. So I'm going to give you a 20% bonus, which Erica greatly appreciates. And she even puts a cherry on top, letting Ted know they're about to poach a very big client very, very soon of the name of Deb. I forgot her name. Nicole Kidman. Which, again, if you know her from the AMC or the Aquaman or, like, classic films, yeah, that's the same person. Obviously, Ted's a little bit taken aback considering the fact that she's one of Samantha's clients. And she's like, yes, but Nicole has been looking to kind of, get some new representation. And, she's a very big name in Hollywood. This could be a good thing for the firm. Our Ted interjects of, like, saying, I don't think, now's the time. I feel like we're finally starting to mend the bridge between our two firms. That, poaching another firm's clientele might not be in the best interest right now for that relationship. So Ted wants Erica to take a back seat for that, let it kind of be for now. If it does happen naturally, at least it won't affect them. Obviously, Erica gets a little insulted by this, but she's going to persevere nonetheless about this because that's the person she is for that. Believe from there, Leia speaks to Ted's right-hand woman about, the bonuses recently that, even though the bonus was comparably sizable, she's not complaining too much. She has noticed that a couple other of her peers have garnished bigger bonuses, which Leia finds a little insulting considering the fact she has done a lot of work for them in the last even several few months, that if this is the amount that she's being given off the bat is something that she's not really entirely, comfortable with. And especially the fact that she just recently made a big boom in her writing career, that, maybe it's time for her to really find out how much she is valuable to the team at the Black Firm. Well, Black and Associates, actually. Um, we cut back over to the therapy side where the group session is now beginning, the first one of many, as Stewart and Lewis continued their minor bickering, explaining their, why they're here and everything. Lewis bringing up to the, obviously his traumatic issues during the main show, and then Stewart kind of, bringing up his issues with Ted and everything, and the two mocking each other for everything. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of fun, like, because, it's comparing one show's problems to another. So I'm like, it's very fun to say the least, because, like, it's compare and contrast with that sort of thing. However, once Lewis kind of, interjects in what about his kids and everything, about just kind of how, like, the work-life balance has not been, great for him recently, Stewart does snicker at him because he doesn't know how it feels. Obviously Stewart was not that long ago where he was having to balance his kids and work and life and his partner and everything of the sort, that it becomes very difficult to mitigate that. Obviously, he gives a little piece of advice to Lewis that, things will get better as the kids get a little older. So just brace yourselves, don't punish yourself too harshly if you're not able to make the certain criteria that you think you should be able to make. And, Lewis actually appreciates that. It's a very nice sentiment to have for that sort. Yeah, but how the two do continue on? Oh, well, I forgot there was a little interjection moment where the two were, like, getting into another heated fight. The actual therapist actually blew up in front of them, like, getting mad at them for, like, their actions. And so he actually has to compose himself. It's like, oh, shit, I actually blew up to my client. So I'm like, I really do apologize for that. But Lewis and Stewart seem to be on the right ways to friendship, so to speak. Samantha finds out about the Nicole Kidman attempted push, where she lets Rick know about it, saying that, well, I know that you and Erica seem to have, like, a very heated rivalry. So any tips on how to overstep Erica's attempts to win over a client? And Rick does admit, like, yeah, Erica's not really, like, one, like, if you're alone in a room with her, essentially do not consider her your client anymore. She will be moved away to someone else. And essentially the term is to just make sure Nicole does not get into a room with Erica. Otherwise, that's it. That's game over for their firm. And Samantha's like, all right, valid point. I will follow suit on that. We get to the first flashback where it's back in 2010. We're back in court. Apparently Ted and Eddie's dad is called Eddie as a witness, as a character witness, to defend for his dad. Obviously, Ted's not really a big fan of the idea, but it's Eddie's choice, and Eddie decides he wants to go for it. Again, still caring about the family and everything. He still wants to have these, moments together, which honestly, again, it's really, really sweet. It really is. And, he's going over his rehearsal, obviously, again, with everything going on, as much as Ted does not want to be there, it is Eddie's choice and he's here for Eddie. He's not here for his dad, just to make that 100% clear about that. So I believe from there we go back over to, I'm a little lost here what the heck's really going on. I really am. I forgot I forgot. I know there was another mid-Ted scene, but I forgot where that was. I know Rick does eventually head over to the NBC lot, because the Universal lot, which conveniently, again, NBC, he talks to the producer on the prospective adaptation, and she does say that, Dylan, not really someone we're interested in. She's very nice, very beautiful face, but, she doesn't have the chops. She doesn't have much experience to even commandeer this film. So it's in our best interest, the potential director's best vision, for us not to even approach her as a potential candidate for this role. Obviously, Rick tries his best, but the producer's like, don't push any further, otherwise I'll have certain conversations. Dylan may never work on a Universal film. Just to let you know of that. So obviously Rick gets a little bit defeated by that, having to return back. I believe we head to that point in the night where Ted gets called out by his associate about him leaking the information to Samantha, which Ted tries to calm her down and explain to her what he did there. She's like, we've done so much to salvage our ship, and, we're finally at a point where we can start thriving again. This was a great thriving point. Yet again, you purposely are misleading us to maintain a personal good relationship with Samantha, which is not in our firm's best interest, which again is starting to form a little bit of cracks, in the foundation, a little bit of cracks, but we'll get to more about that in a little bit later. Then followed up Erica yelling at Ted for, ruining her chances of poaching Nicole Kidman, as Nicole Kidman called Winovin is no longer interested in speaking to any prospectful new representation. Obviously, Erica kind of noticed like the similarities. Like as soon as she told Ted, as soon as she figured out there was a connection to Samantha, all of a sudden Nicole pulls down. She couldn't ignore it. So with that being said, yeah, this is 100% Ted's fault. And Ted's trying to make everyone understand what's going on, but no one's really listening to him because at the end of the day, they're more focused on the firm's survivability and prospective for growth, and Ted doing this is kind of holding them back. So I believe from there we go back to somewhere in the US of A where Stewart and Lewis have a little sit down about things, just making sure they're on, decent terms or whatever, trying to make sure that they're all friendly, Freddy, buddy, which it kind of seems like they are. It's kind of, they're on the straight and mellow with that one, which is a little appreciative on that front. And I don't remember how exactly they lead into, the mud bath where Lewis offers Stewart to go over to, the mud baths is, their way of, grabbing a drink and, kind of, bonding, having male bonding, which this is a very interesting way to say it, but okay. That's kind of where I'll leave it as be. Rick calls over Dylan to let her know about that the deal did not go through, that, she can audition if she wants, but sadly it isn't something that I think the producers are going to budge by, which again Dylan does get disappointed by. They have a little nice dinner scene in one of the conference rooms. Dylan's starting to talk more about her upbringing, about how she wanted to become an actress, how she became here, and it kind of seems like I kind of had this feeling from the beginning that Rick and her had a little bit of chemistry between them. This scene kind of augment test a little bit, at least seeing Dylan kind of starting to gain a little bit of feelings for Rick. It's kind of becoming a little obvious, so to speak, as the two are starting to talk and everything about each other. I know Leia has a confrontation scene with Erica, even though she's in the middle of a drinking session, to tell her that that she knows everything, that all the bonuses that Erica approved, and the fact she didn't get a high enough bonus, or at least getting some sort of acknowledgement of all the things she's done already for the firm in her brief time as a senior associate, that I feel like she deserves a little bit more credibility on that, a little bit more respect about it, and Erica does call her out because one of the things she's still not happy about is the time when Leia abandoned the dinner with Adam Driver to mourn for a cat, which again, even though that there's a part of Erica that understands that, again, right now with how the firm is, this was one of those things where she should have made those adjustments to allow this dinner to go through, and since the fact that it didn't, it kind of just stood out as a sore thumb to Erica, but Leia just kind of reminds her, hey, look, sure, you may be mad about that, but at the end of the day, whatever, I am focused on the business, I am focusing on the business, I'm bringing in clients, I'm keeping clients, I'm helping you with clients. Those alone should be enough to warrant my loyalty to this company, so please, don't insult me by that, don't. Which again leaves kind of Erica kind of stumbling for a little bit on that. Then we cut over back to the therapy session where Stewart and Lewis are about to strip, about to get into that mud, and then the two kind of just acknowledging their partners, the people, their best friends that kind of push them to where they are now. Especially now with everything that it's kind of interesting to say the least about that. It's always the people around us to make us the better version of each other, and this kind of counts as Stewart has a little bit more of a found appreciation for Ted as a result, and Lewis is kind of pulled by this, and he's like, okay, give me a moment, I'm going to contact my partner, my best friend, my buddy, and he mentions Harvey by name, and that's when Stewart's like, wait a minute, a lawyer that has a really good friend known as Harvey, you know Harvey Specter? And that's when Lewis says yes. And that's when again Stewart joins the Harvey train, and that's when Lewis gets really mad about, are you serious? I go to a whole other side of the coast and I'm still getting pestered by how great Harvey is as a lawyer. And then Stewart brings up the fact, hey, look, Ted and him are best friends, they're really close. So I'm like, it's kind of not hard, especially how high up the regards that he is to people. And that's when Lewis is like, I need a moment. I need to get away from this. So I find that really funny. Sorry, tea was like really getting like perfectly hot, so I'm like, let me down it now when it's relatively available. I know Ted has a brief call with Stewart, calling him up about just making sure he's okay and everything. And the two seem like to be on the straight and narrow again, like fully this time. Stewart also needing a little reassurance from Ted that everything's going to be all right for the next week. That that David Bowie's not going to try anything on his family, which Ted's like he won't. He's not that dumb enough to make a move when he has dirt against him. So do not worry about that. Your family will be fine. Which kind of, again, recomforts Stewart a little bit of what he needs about that. We come back over to 2010 where Eddie gives his brief speech about his father. Which, again, his father's not perfect. He acknowledges that. But at the end of the day, he's still his dad. And they did have some good moments together. And that, he kind of just wants to get more moments like that, down the road. And, this touches the judge. Even Ted's dad has a little bit of, like, a final words before his sentencing. And, the judge decides, all right, well, I heard everything I need to do, so I'm going to be a little lenient and give your father a 3-year sentence in prison. And that's it. That's all he's going to get. So instead of like getting a much more higher sentence, 3 years is, I think fair, to be fair with you. It's not too long. It's not that short. So from there, I believe, so we come back over to the present day. I think we are in the next day properly, where Rick gives Ted a call, having an idea for trying to get Dylan into that movie. And, he's using Ted's lesson guiding, again, to kind of blackmail him to, like, going along with this, which Ted decides to do so. So they agree to do that. They head back into the lot, this time using the representation from the proposed director that Ted does have under his belt. They kind of peer pressured the producer, hey, look, it's gonna be a field day if the director found out that you're prohibiting a certain actress from auditioning for his movie that could potentially be a very key tool to his arsenal for his cast lineup. He's not gonna be happy about that. So with all that, she decides to limit and allows Dylan to audition, which again probably hurts her soul to say that, allowing Rick and Ted to get Dylan that audition and manage to move forward in her career as a result of that. Then I believe, so Ted goes back to the office. He meets up with Erica, in which, he sits down Erica trying to explain to her, like, why he did what he did with the whole leaking Nicole's potential poaching to Samantha, where she tells her the truth that, about 15 years ago, that Ted and Samantha were involved in a romantic relationship at some point. They broke up because Ted was upset over a case. One of Samantha's clients was over it because of Ted's actions, and the fact that Ted's brother, his older brother, was killed as a result of it. It was not something that he was vehemently proud of, and it's something even to now he still has the need to atone for that. People died because of him. So at least in his brain mindset, it's never gonna go really away because of it, and he's gonna have to live with that for the rest of his life. So him at least giving some goodwill to Samantha won't recover everything, but it will at least give a little bit of credibility that he has changed a bit, that he's willing to like kind of start to make those amendments now, rather than later. So, but Erica does appreciate the honesty and does want to pursue forward with, continuing, with the exception that, Ted is a little bit also leaning on certain things as well as a result, just kind of, be equal as a result of that. And then Ted decides to give Leia his own office, considering that Erica kind of, reached out to Ted as well about just, Leia's recent actions, and just like at least giving her an office in one of the floors would at least, be nice to be able to kind of get some sort of credibility on that. And she, even though she gets the office, she's a little bit hesitant on it because, okay, it's not in the main floor. It's not with the best view. And then Ted's like trying to call her out. I was like, are you serious? And she's like, no, it's perfectly fine. She gives Ted a hug, which I'm pretty sure Ted has not had a hug in so many years. Leia got her own office. She spoke up and she got what she wanted, which I think is a really great thing to say. So from there, we go back to the spa where Stewart and Lewis are enjoying their mud bath together very weirdly, talking about things. Lewis bringing up to the fact that everyone and a best friend should have that one bestie that they know for a fact if they call them that they will drop everything to come to their aid wherever they are, no matter what it is. Lewis is Harvey, Stewart is Ted to an extent, and Lewis is extending the offer to Stewart to have Stewart be Lewis's second. second flamingo pal, which I'm just like, interesting. The fact you're going to trust a completely random stranger you just met less than a day ago. But okay, sure. Well, whatever the case might be, if it works out, it works out, Okay, I'm down for it. I really am. As that's the story of how Stewart and Lewis became friends. Interesting resort in that. We cut back over to the last of the flashbacks where Eddie is a little bit happy that, Ted and their dad has got a little bit more time together, a little bit more, and, he hopes they can have a little bit more, especially he's bringing up to the day they had, like, I guess one of their last fonding memories was them having a shared baseball game together, and his dad is like, I would love to have one of those once I get out of here. And Ted kind of dismisses Eddie a little bit, kind of just reminding his dad, like, okay, look, you got lucky, but, like, and this doesn't really change anything. And Ted's dad, I think for his rare moment of weakness, just really wants to express to Ted, like, look, I understand your hatred of me. I completely do. Just give me a chance at least, because, all my life I've always been alone. I've never had anyone love me, anyone care for me. That the fact that I still have my two sons, that there's still a possibility, like, I at least want to have an opportunity to be able to kind of progress with that. And Ted kind of is very neutral on his answer for the time being, at least to have dinner together before, he goes. And, Ted's a little bit limited for that. Again, doing this for Eddie, not really for himself, but, it's one of those sacrifices he's playing with that regard. Then we end the flashbacks from there. We go back over to Erica and Leia having another conversation about everything. Erica still believing in Leia, that, that she has much more to learn, much more to do, but this is still the right path for her to take, at least right now for them. And the two share a little nice drink together to commemorate Leia's new office. Ted getting a little bit of remarks from his assistant again, and now his assistant's kind of poaching him. I'm like, so when am I going to get my own office? And Ted's like, I'm going to go. I'm just go. I'm not going to hand out offices willy-nilly today. I'm not. I think that's when, we can see when Samantha, I don't believe so. I think we cut back over to Rick heading downstairs. Dylan is downstairs as well, telling him the news that she had the audition that day with the director. She's going to get the role once the film goes into production, which is great. It's a great piece of news, but Dylan does have to be a little bit transparent about something. She does say, despite this victory and everything, that she kind of really only wanted to celebrate it with one specific person, that being Rick in a romantic capacity. The two kiss, and Rick kind of pulls her away because whether it's because he's like her agent or her representation, or because he still has feelings for Erica, is a little less unclear. But he walks away from her as kind of like that ends the episode with kind of the I guess the uncertain whys of Rick's brain as he's caught in this very difficult place in his life. And that was it for this week's episode of Suits LA. Like I said, I think this was a really good episode in my opinion. I think Lewis's appearance definitely, made, the banter between him and Stewart much more, it elevated the quality of the episode a little bit. I wish we could have got a little bit more with that. I think we got a fair amount, but I would have loved an extra scene or two between them. Maybe we could have cut that. No, I'm trying to say, like, yeah, every character should deserve their own plot line. They should, like, have some sort of story direction, to be honest with you. Not saying Leia doesn't deserve it, but if we have to, I would have definitely made some cuts around there, but I completely understand the point of that being with the case. Us kind of elevating closer to Eddie's, soon to be death in the flashbacks. Again, it's going to be next week's episode. I don't know how they're going to address it. I really don't know. And I'm really a little bit concerned about that because, again, Eddie's such a sweet man, such a sweite kid, and I don't want him to get hurt. I really don't. I think that's one of, like, the only positives with this show that I'll say. Like, you really, like, for me, like, if Eddie was real and, he was a real person in New York, I would have definitely invited him to my group at some point. He seemed like a load of fun. But yeah, no, but other than that, no, I think, Ted kind of, is trying to make some more atonements, especially with Stewart and Samantha, was noted. It definitely is a slight improvement for his character. Also making the provisions for Leia and Eric as well, trusting more of Eric as a result. It seems like Ted is progressing towards a much more neutral zone since he's come back from New York. And, the Rick stuff was an interesting thing. I knew that there was going to be some sort of callback. I knew there was some sort of chemistry between Rick and Dylan since the first two episodes, so them calling back on it was, I think, noted and acknowledgeable. Now I'm starting to see, like, how do we nail that ship when we come back to things next week about that. I'll just be very curious to see how they're going to do it, especially with everything going to be ending on a cliffhanger. It's going to be a little annoying, but we'll see how that all pans out to be. We'll see. Well, that all being said, I'm giving this episode 1 3/4 thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of this week's episode of Suits LA. Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you say meh? Let me know down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, reviewing every episode in the series of Suits LA. It's weird to say that. If you want to see more from us on What's in the Tube, right now we are just doing rookie episode reviews each and every week after brand episodes on Tuesday nights on ABC. But if you don't care about Suits LA, we will be back next week with the series finale review. We should be live on that, I believe, Monday or Tuesday next week, so stay tuned for that. And then the following week, we will be doing a definitive series review for the whole series as it wraps up. A spoiler-filled conversation about the whys and nots for the show. We'll get more about that in a couple weeks. And that will conclude our Suits LA coverage forever. But again, see you till next week. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, share if you want to. Ring that bell and follow social media for more. But until we see each other again, please stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.